Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are checking out the missing piece of my Legacy Collection puzzle, because recently we've had a few different smaller like this type of Legacy Collection figures come out, and unfortunately I couldn't get a hold of this one. I got all of the others, which was a Velociraptor and a Gallimimus, but I could not find the Dilophosaurus. However, luckily I now have, finally, so we get to take a look at it here on the channel. And the funny thing is, this of course was the one I was most excited about, but was definitely the hardest one to find. And as you can see, we have kind of like a Jurassic Park type of a look for our Dilophosaurus, and considering it's a Legacy Collection release, I'd imagine that's what they were going for. And it does look really cool, I will say that. The coloration looks nice. Of course, we would have benefited from more paint apps, but it still looks okay. As far as the packaging goes, you can see it's your standard when it comes to the Legacy Collection. You can see a nice preview of the figure there, as well as the other two that I was just speaking of that we've already reviewed here on the channel, as well as a little opening over here for the frill to come through if you'd like to kind of sample that action feature. But let's go ahead, pop this out of the box, and check it out. So here is our Dilophosaurus, and I'm not gonna lie, I actually really like this one. And again, like I said, nail paint definitely would have made an improvement on it, and more coloration actually running out onto the tail. Boy, that could have been a vast improvement. But outside of that, it's a pretty nice looking version of the Dilophosaurus. And when it comes to this particular sculpt, which we've had a few times now, I definitely feel like this is the best version of this sculpt that we have had. And even though the frill design and coloration I wouldn't say is similar to Jurassic Park, it still looks really neat. I like the design that they've come up with in the coloration. It's similar, but not really exact. I feel like this Dilophosaurus is almost like a mixture between the Dominion version and the Jurassic Park version, somewhere in between there, but it still definitely looks really nice as far as what I can see so far. So let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So of course, since we have had this sculpt in the past, we don't need to go over the sculpt again. We've already done that. We need to basically go over anything that would be new with this figure, and primarily, for the most part, it's the coloration of the figure. So straight away up here in the face, you can see we have a nice green. We also have a very dark grayish tone up here, bordering on a black, but you can see that it kind of runs up there into the frill of the Dilophosaurus, comes running down here around the eye socket, and then leads up here along the jawline, and that is very reminiscent to the Jurassic Park version of a Dilophosaurus. And I feel like they really nailed the tones of the green here for the primary body color of the Dilophosaurus when it comes to the way it appears in Jurassic Park as well. We do, of course, have an articulated jaw, which you can see the inside of the mouth sports some nice paintwork for the most part. We have a nice, very dark tone there for the tongue, and we actually have some paintwork on the upper side of the inside of the mouth, and I don't know how good it's picking up there on camera, but you can see back there in the back of the throat, for some reason, just randomly for a little while there, we don't have coloration, so it's a little sloppy as far as that goes. But you can see the teeth are all sculpted, of course, nicely, but painted pretty nicely on the upper jaw, a little sloppy on the lower jaw, but they're not too bad overall. As we lead back here into the frill, and we get a nice extension on that frill, you can see how cool that design looks, as well as the paintwork there of the frill of the Dilophosaurus. But you can see that we have, again, some nice tones of almost like an orangish tone that runs around the outer edge, and is, I would say, primarily the coloration of the frill, but then we also have some yellows that run through, and then you also have some reds and whites within, and they all just kind of squiggle and design through. And the frill as a whole seems to have a little bit of a glossy look, kind of like, just not really a glossy, but like a slight satin type of a look. And it looks pretty cool, definitely helps for the frill to stand out and jump out at you, and really does add a nice element of flashiness to the frill area of the Dilophosaurus. As you lead back here into the neck, you continue to see that greenish tone, and then you see that same dark tone that we see on the face pick back up here in the neck, and you can see how it kind of overtakes the entire top of the Dilophosaurus and then sort of stripes down into the body as you move through and leads all the way out here into the hip region, but then it quickly disappears, and then we don't have anything else as we lead out the length of the tail. I can definitely see a speckling on it, but it's not a really abundant speckling. It looks to be that same dark grayish tone, but it looks pretty good. On the underside, you do have some yellows picking up here, a light yellow in the throat, but it tapers off very quickly before we even get too far down into the stomach region of the Dilophosaurus. You can see that the frill on the rear side also sports that kind of orangish tone. But again, it would have been nice to see more color running along the underside as far as this light yellow and more of this dark gray running out here on the tail. It really would have made a huge improvement for the figure. But even without that stuff, it's still pretty nice. You have a yellowish tone for the eye and a nicely painted pupil. Let's take a look at the opposing side. Yeah, definitely looks pretty good on both sides, so no real big issues as far as sloppiness when it comes to the eye paint on this one. And again, we don't have nail paint on the hands or the feet, which is a bit of a downside, but it's still not terrible. And one thing that I'm not a big fan of, though, is the fact that we, for some reason, chose to give us the Jurassic Facts app code. First of all, there you go if you'd like to add it to your collection. But we did it this way on the back, and I don't really like it very much like that, because now there's like this ugly seam that runs the entire course of the back up here, and I don't really like the way they did that. It's not really great the other way when it comes to that kind of like pull-up version, but I really don't like it like this either. I wish they'd just go back to putting it on the undersides of the feet like they used to. I really feel like that would be much better for the figures, but still, again, definitely one of the nicest repaints of this Dilophosaurus that I think I've seen from Mattel, and probably one of the nicest Dilophosaurus figures outside of like the Amber collection and Hammond collection that they've released overall. As far as articulation goes, you do have the jaw articulation. You can see the frill works with the jaw articulation because that's part of the action feature. You also have arm articulation, forward and back and out away from the body. And then you have leg articulation, forward and back. Doesn't come out. Oh, actually it does. Look at that. I did not expect that. I was going to say, normally for this type of figure, you don't have that ability to articulate the legs out away from the body. But look at that, they tricked me that time. We do have that articulation, so that's pretty cool. And then you have articulation in the tail as well, but that's also part of the action feature. So to activate that action feature, you basically just have to move the tail in an upward position. And you can see that we then get that very intimidating look to our Dilophosaurus. And it is 100% telling us to get away or we are about to eat a face full of venom. But definitely a really cool action feature. Again, pretty much perfect for a Dilophosaurus. As far as a size goes, for a length, you are looking at about the 7.5 inches or about 19 centimeters. And then for a height to the top, I don't know what would be the highest point, probably the top of the frill right here, about 3 inches or around 8 centimeters. And then pretty close to the same thing here for the tail, but I would say actually more like 7.5 centimeters rather than 8. So the frill there might actually be a little bit taller than the tail, maybe slightly, in the position that it's currently in. And again, with articulated legs, you could of course, position it up and stuff like that, so you could get a much higher stance on your Dilophosaurus. That's really up to you. But as far as a size comparison, even though we've had this figure a few times already, we'll do a size comparison anyway. So first of all, our usual suspects with Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack, Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to our Dilophosaurus. You can see it falls right in that same size range as like a Savage Strike type figure, a size range that we are all very familiar with when it comes to the Mattel line. But for one more comparison, which actually makes me wonder if maybe they slightly altered the legs, but you can see that the Dilophosaurus here, the newer one, has its head kind of facing a little bit higher, more so than the older one. And if I try to get the legs in like the similar position where you can see they're a little bit spread further apart on this one, like it's not really easy to do, and I feel like it squats it down a lot more. But you can see outside of that aspect, now it's going to fall on its face, but outside of that aspect, again, everything is the same as far as the sculpt. You can see the tail positioning, the body positioning, even the neck is facing the same direction. So they are definitely the same sculpt primarily, but it looks like maybe either there's been some slight modifications to the leg positioning, or mine just maybe is warped. I'm not really sure, but slightly different as far as the stance compared to the older one, but primarily it is the same figure. And just in case you wanted to see a size comparison next to the Hammond collection version of the Dilophosaurus, you can definitely see they are a very similar size when it comes to pretty much everything. The head sculpt is pretty similar, the body size is pretty similar. I think the Hammond collection version is a little thinner, the head looks a little thinner and doesn't have quite as wide of a lower jaw or anything, but overall, they are still a fairly similar size. So this brand new Legacy Collection version of the Dilophosaurus from Mattel for the Jurassic World line is definitely another fun release. Again, it's better, I think, in my opinion, than your normal Mattel, because at least the coloration of this one kind of resembles a Jurassic Park version of a Dilophosaurus, and the paintwork of the frill is really quite stellar, honestly. I think the coloration that they've chosen for the frill looks gorgeous and definitely stands out. And in a sea of Dilophosaurus figures that we've received from Mattel over the years, it stands out more so than many others, which I really do quite like. And the coloration outside of that is pretty plain, but still pretty nice. It's not great because we could have used more coloration, but we do have, again, that kind of Jurassic Park greenish tone and the same kind of design, sort of, to what you would see on a Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus. So it is a pretty nice paint job, but more of the dark gray running out onto the tail and more of the lighter tone on the underside, as well as painted nails, would have made this go from a pretty nice figure to an excellent figure. Sculpt-wise, though, it is a really nice sculpt. It's got lots of really fine detail, just like it had the first time around, and overall has, again, a fairly screen-accurate appearance as far as a Dilophosaurus goes. Maybe not picture-perfect, but for the most part, it looks like a JP-style Dilophosaurus. The scan code is a little more obnoxious as far as this one compared to many others when it comes to the placement and the way that they have it, where you kind of like pull it up on the back. Definitely would have looked a lot better still on the underside of the feet like they used to be, but I mean, I guess it is what it is. We just have to get used to that and hope that they change it at some point in the future. But the articulation is pretty fun, works very smoothly, and you also have the action feature, which is also fun and works very smoothly. So as a whole, it's a really nice version of a Legacy Collection Dilophosaurus, and one, in my opinion, worth picking up. So if you are interested, head to your local Target, and hopefully they'll have it. This one's definitely a bit of a pain in the butt to search out, but it is definitely worth the hunt because it is a pretty cool version of a Dilophosaurus. So check your local Target and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.